Hey everybody, it's Miss C again. We're going to be talking about slabs today, specifically how to roll even slabs and how to store slabs so that they're useful for the particular type of slab building that you're attempting to do. So first off, what is a clay slab? I have pre-rolled mine here so I can show you immediately pretty much what they look like. So a clay slab is literally what it sounds like. It is a big flat piece of clay. Now, here's the thing. Rolling a slab sounds super easy, but this is not dough. It's not that stretchy. It's squishable, but it's not super stretchy. At least we don't generally want it to be. So here's how we roll a slab. Whenever you first get a lump of clay, you start by kind of pre-flattening it with your hand. Work on top of a mat of some kind, that way it doesn't stick to the table. I forgot that when I first started, and you can see that there's a little bit where it didn't want to come up. Luckily, I hadn't squished too far, so I didn't have to rip apart a slab I'd already built, but there you go. All right, from there, I have a couple things that can help me roll this slab nicely. First off, rolling pin. I'm using a big rolling pin because I needed a bigger slab, but you might have a shorter rolling pin or a smaller rolling pin to work with. And that's just fine. You just need to, use it appropriately. That said, whenever you are rolling with a rolling pin, before you get started, wash off your rolling pin. Clay likes to stick to it. This is the one I used earlier. You can see that there's little bits that have stayed on there. That is not something I want to get into my nice new slab. So make sure you wash it off just with a bit of sponge and water at a sink. Just to make things nice. For storing your slab later, you might want to do the same for any trays that you're using. Just again, so that you don't have any crusty bits that get into the surface of your clay, because it will impress any kind of texture that you put on there. Now, the next thing that I want are some kind of like shims. Now, I've selected shims so that I have two shims that are about the same thickness. There are lots of different thicknesses of shims. Basically, all that their purpose is they sit on either side of your clay so that when you're rolling, you have a very even, flat slab. It's never going to be too thick. It's never going to be too thin. All that other stuff, I can see there's little bits that got in my clay. I'll live. It'll be fine. All right, so that's how you roll out your slab. Don't forget to be flipping it over. That should have been in our Art 1, how to make a clay mug video. But if you forget to flip it over, the only thing that's gonna happen is it's gonna be hard to pick up again. So every couple of rolls, flip it. All right, from there, I'll have a slab. It will be nice, it will be fresh, it will be new, it will be soft. Now, no matter what kind of slab building you're doing, you can almost never immediately use that slab. This one has been sitting out in the open air for almost 2 hours with a little bit of paper towels. So this is about the stiffness that I can use to chop apart my pieces. But there's a difference between a soft slab and a hard slab. This teapot right here was using a soft slab. You'll see that this side is curved, it's rounded, and because of that, I couldn't have a very tough slab because if I did, twisting it, curving it like that would break it. The thing that I'm about to build, however, I'm making a different teapot. I'm gonna make a teapot based on a D20 because I am that kind of nerd. That means that all my pieces need to be extremely flat and extremely sharp, which means I don't wanna start putting them together until they're stiff enough that I can pick them up and they won't bend, all right? Now that said, I still wanna cut apart my pieces because I'm impatient. And I also wanna show you how to miter corners. So right now, what I'm gonna do is talk about clay, like slab storage and like how to use it. So this one right here, say that this was totally fresh, totally new. I've got a tray right here. You'll see that I lined it with some paper towel and I put my slab on top of it. Now, if you're lucky, you won't have like me and have pieces coming off the side. I also put a couple pieces of paper towel on top of it. And this is how I stored it nice and flat. Here's another slab that I did. You can see that it's still nice and covered in there under a couple layers of paper towel. Again, because I need mine to be much drier, I'm putting dry paper towels in with it to help store. If I need this to be stored overnight, which if you're doing a soft slab like this, having one layer of paper towel and stored in a flat place in a airtight bag of some kind, that paper towel will dry out just enough of the water for you to make a soft slab the next day. If I need mine to be harder, like I'm about to do, I am going to have my slabs probably under paper towel, and I'm going to replace the paper towel tomorrow, and I might let it sit 2 nights. So I'll have it sit with the paper towel today, I'll put it in an airtight bag tonight, I will pull it out again tomorrow, put a new dry paper towel in there, and work on it the day after when it's nice and stiff. But of course, I'm also going to cut some pieces for y'all today so y'all can see that, but those will also be kept in a dry paper towel, airtight bag, all of that situation. I'm using the paper towel to be essentially my control over how wet or how dry I'm keeping this. If I wanted it to stay more wet, I wouldn't put the paper towels in it. Because I want it to dry a little but not too much, I am putting the dry paper towels in and I'm leaving it overnight. All right, so set those aside, pull this guy back out. Whoop. All right, cutting slabs. The general temptation, especially with any kind of shape, is to grab a needle tool and just cut off the side. Almost never a good idea, especially whenever your clay slab is still pretty wet. What you're gonna find is that whenever you're dragging through, you'll see right here that it's got these little crusties. Now, if my slab were even wetter, they'd be even worse. And look at this, it's getting all over the end of my needle tool. And most of the time, kids aren't gonna get there and clean that up. It's awful. So, what I suggest instead is cutting out using something like this if you can. And if you can't, yeah, use a needle tool if you must. But if you have any kind of straight side, use something like this. Don't trust yourself to cut a straight line. You know you can't draw a straight line. Don't try. All right, now from here, I have some templates. If you have a template, awesome. That is honestly the best thing you could possibly have. I based mine off of this. I have a bunch of equilateral triangles. That is the main portion of my little teapot right here. But I do have a couple other pieces like my handle. That's the wrong one. This is the right one. My handle right here, and also my spout piece, which is right here. So these are all the shapes that I'm gonna need for this particular teapot. So I already have those all designed out and put together. If you don't have a template, you can freehand this if you're going really off the wall, but I don't suggest it. Especially since slabs, once they've been set to dry the way that they need to, they don't generally re-wet or squish or any of that nicely again. So you kind of want to roll all of your slab at once and work with it all at once. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to put my little triangle on here for my side. And I'm going to lightly score the surface. All that this is doing is it's making a very light dent that I'm using as a guideline. So you can see right there. And to make my life easier, and since all of my sides are very even and regular, I can also come in and have a second one chopped right from there. So say that I want to make 2 pieces. I'm going to use this flat edge like a cutting chopper. I'm going to put it right above where I want it to go, and I'm going to go straight down. If you look from the side, you can see I am in fact going straight up and down. I'm trying not to let it tilt because that is something that will happen a lot. All right, now my slab is still kind of wet, so I'm going to have to be really gentle here. All right, so I'm going to set aside this amount of slab for later use, because I am a person who doesn't like re-cutting slabs. That's not quite far enough. There we go, laying flat. I'm gonna go ahead and cover that up with the paper towels I've been using. Make sure they keep from drying out too much. And I'm gonna continue working on these pieces. So I'm gonna continue cutting my pieces apart. All right, so here I have my little slab pieces. They are a little bit like cookies right now. And again, I need them to remain flat. I can't start putting them together just yet because mine needs to be extremely sharp cornered and all of that. However, I can prep these in one more way before allowing them to dry more completely. And that is, I can miter the corners. Now, a mitered corner is a type of corner in which instead of putting the pieces together like so, where they're flat, obviously that's not the angles that I need on mine. Mine have a very strange kind of like angle where they're sitting apart, kind of like this. They're not quite at a 90-degree angle. But you'll see right here, I can't exactly put them together there. It doesn't match up very well. So what I can do is I can shave a little off the inside corner, and what that will allow me to do is put them together much more cleanly. You'll see this kind of corner around crown molding or baseboards a lot, especially around doorways. So take a look around in doorways that you see around you, especially in homes, and see if you see any mitered corners there. It'll start to make sense. Now the tool I have for that is this one right here. This one will make two kinds of mitered corners. It'll make a very sharp mitered corner right here using this side, a slightly more wide one right here using this side, or a 45-degree angle using either one of these corners. A 45-degree angle is gonna make a 90-degree corner, so they'll come together in an exact point, which means I'm gonna need one of these sides. Now clay is a little bit forgiving, so I don't really need to measure out the exact angle that I need. What I need to know is if it's going to be a wide angle or an acute angle, so obtuse or acute. In my case, I need an obtuse angle, so I don't actually need to chop off that much. So I'm gonna use this skinnier side right here. So here's how this works. This piece will slide along the table, and this edge right here will be against this flat side of my piece of clay. So like so, and I'm just slide it along. Now again, this would work a little bit better if my clay were a little bit stiffer, because, yes, alarm, I know, stop. If this clay were a little stiffer, because you can see as I dragged this through, it started to push and warp this corner of mine. So again, since I need my stuff to be real flat, real sharp, I might want to wait to continue doing this on my further pieces, but I can show you right now what this should look like. So I'm gonna brace that on my finger so it doesn't warp. And you can see that I'm getting these angled sides rather than one that is straight up and down. Okay. So once I've done that on all my sides, you can see that this side in here has a little bit of an angle to it. This side right here has a little bit of an angle to it. It's not sitting straight up anymore. Once I do that to both my pieces, when I put them together, they should have the ability to sit together along those two lines and be at that obtuse angle that I need them to be at. All right, go ahead and pause. All right, so here I've trimmed off and mitered all of my corners. So again, they're no longer sitting at a 90-degree angle. And when I put them together, that whole side will touch, and my angle will be a wide angle right here. It's not 90 degrees. It's not sitting like straight up like this. It sits more like this. And they'll sit together quite nicely. Now again, clay is pretty forgiving, but mine is squished around a little bit more. So I will probably continue letting this dry again one more night overnight with some dry paper towels to make sure that they're nice and stiff, and I can get a very sharp, clean corner on my box, or my teapot in this case. If I were looking for something that could round out, I would probably work with it at this stage so I could get a nice curved side. If you need something that is 90 degrees, you will again miter here. If you need something more acute, you would miter here. If you need something more wide, you'd miter here. But this is a very useful tool for that. If you don't have this particular tool, you can still miter the corners. It's just a little bit less precise. You tend to use a needle tool, and you run it along the edge like so at an angle like this. And you can still end up with a mitered side or mitered corner. It just is a little bit less precise. All right, so use that to your advantage, my children. I love you very much. Happy building.